Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for coming out today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. We are so happy that you have joined us, whether you are here in person in our fellowship hall or live and in person over Zoom. This congregation is stronger because each and every one of you have chosen to join us today. So thank you for that. To start, I give the friendly reminder that if you carry an electronic device with you here in the fellowship hall, you might want to check that it has been silenced and will not disturb our worship experience this morning. My name is Samantha McCoy. I'm happy to welcome you this morning. I'm currently serving as the chair of our Sunday Services Ministry team. In my nearly 20 years here in the congregation, I've done a few years on the Board of Trustees. I was the chair of the Religious Education Ministry team for a while. And as with so many of us here, we wear a variety of hats as time goes on. So it's all been a joy and a pleasure. This congregation has been meeting in various forms in various places for more than 200 years. And we gratefully acknowledge that the land that our fellowship hall is on today is on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. If you are here for the first time, we welcome you. We will take a moment to greet each other and to greet each other online as well. But I wanted to add a few announcements before we get started. One is that while we are looking forward to this week's service and hearing from Dale Miller Hill this morning in our series of lay-led services, we are also looking forward next week to hearing from Annie Chanel, who will be doing a service about the experience of Muslims here in the United States. So that is sure to be interesting, and I hope you will choose to return and join us again next week. My other announcement, which is not in the order of service and not up on the screen, is that the Sunday Services team is looking for members. We need you, whoever you might be. Ideally, that team has 6 to 7 members to help support the running of services. We currently have 3 of us. So we are very much open to suggestions. If you think you might be a good fit for this team, please feel free to speak to me or email me. Suzanne Hall-Fritsch, who's also on the team, she is here this morning as well if you'd like to talk to her. Or maybe you know somebody else that you'd like to volunteer to be on the Sunday Services team. We'll go have a conversation with that person as well. But I just wanted to put that out there because running these services, it takes a village, and we're looking to increase the size of our little village. So thank you for that. Again, I formally welcome you to our service today. We are a congregation with many people of many backgrounds, many beliefs, sexualities, genders, and life experiences. But we are happy that you are here with us today. So let's take a moment to greet each other. If you're here in the fellowship hall, we can take a moment to chat. If you're online, feel free to type into the chat box and tell us where you're connecting from. All right. It was easier to get everybody's attention again this morning. So we're going to move into our hymn of welcome, which is Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Now, that's familiar to many of us. So if you know the words, you are welcome to jump right in. And, well, what's going to happen is Cheryl is going to play it through once, and then she's going to stand up. She's going to lead this half to my right, your left, of the fellowship hall in one part, and then I will do my best to jump in and lead the second part over here. If you don't know the words or you're not familiar with it, it's number 188 in the gray hymnal.
And I will play it through once. And you all know it very well. You say it all the time. Certainly at the beginning of every year. And the words are come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover, leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again comes. So this is one, and that is two. Are you ready? Come, whoever you are,
That was lovely. Thank you for being good sports and jumping right in with that. We will light our chalice now, so I invite you to join me with the words that are on the screen as well as in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another, and celebrate life. I will also lead us in our children's affirmation before Dale tells the story. So please put your U's high in the sky as you are able. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other.
Hello, everybody. In my previous congregation, this part of the service was called Time for All Ages, but it was aimed at children and youth. So I see Ethan here, but I want to ask if there are any children and youth in the Zoom audience, and just put in the chat what the ages of the youth are or children, and Sam will let me know later in the service, because it depends on how I tell the story. Either way, I've designed it to involve the audience in the story. So meanwhile, I can start. All of us have learned the first UU principle, the inherent worth and dignity of each person, of every person, it says. But not all our friends and colleagues have yet adopted it. And certainly 160 to 200 years ago, this principle was not universally applied. Specifically, it did not apply to slaves, nor did it always apply to those who were legally free. So, Sam, any answers?
We have, in addition to Ethan, we have a couple of other 12-year-olds
Okay, so let me go to for the young ones in the audience, a few words on slavery. The slavery system allowed one person, usually a plantation owner in the South, to own another individual, depriving them of freedom and free will. The owner could determine how many hours they worked, what they ate, how they worshiped, who they married, and could even decide to separate families and sell the mother to one plantation and the children to another, sometimes far away. Cruelty to slaves was not uncommon. Now, there were also some slaves in the North and in the Caribbean and in other countries, but when war broke out in the United States over this issue, the line was drawn geographically, the North versus the South. Now, I grew up singing many songs of the South with my sister, who was 6 years older, among them many songs about slaves. Did you know that some of these songs were actually written by Northerners who had only a superficial knowledge of plantation life? On the other hand, other songs were written or devised by slaves or adopted or adapted by slaves to sing to other slaves. So what I'm going to do is read the words to two songs and ask you which you think was an authentic slave song and which was written by Northerners. First, gone are the days when my heart was young and gay. Gone are the friends from the cotton fields away. Gone from the earth to a better land I know. I hear their gentle voices calling, Old Black Joe. I'm coming, for my head is bending low. I hear those gentle voices calling, Old Black Joe. How many of you think this was written by slaves for slaves to sing? 1, 2, 3. Okay. How many think it was written by a Northerner? Okay, that's the rest, the majority. Now the second song, let's be even-handed. Follow, follow, follow. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is a-waiting for to carry you to freedom if you follow the drinking gourd. The sun comes back and the first quail calls. Follow the drinking gourd. The riverbank will make a very good road. The dead trees show you the way. Left foot, peg foot, traveling on. Follow the drinking gourd. How many of you think this was written by slaves for slaves to sing? Okay. How many of you think it was written by a Northerner? We have 1 or 2 that think it was written by a Northerner. Well, first of all, it's understandable that some of you may have thought that Old Black Joe was written by a Black person because it's about a Black person and his friends. But in fact, it was written by a Northerner. A clear clue is that there were references to happy times on the cotton fields. But the slaves' lives, in fact, were not happy in general. Gone with the wind, notwithstanding. The first song was written by Stephen Foster, a prolific Northern songwriter born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who had no direct experience with plantation life. In others of his songs, he often used the term darkies and described them as gay or happy. And he described them as missing plantation life, which just isn't true for most. The second song, on the other hand, is more true to the slave's experience and desires, namely to escape and be free by whatever means they could, either by land, using geographic and sky landmarks, or by dying. The drinking gourd was likely the Big Dipper, which pointed north. So last Monday was June 19th or Juneteenth, when in 1865, Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas to announce to the enslaved people that they were finally free. This was over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Without cell phones, communication was pretty slow back then. So returning to the UU principle, the designation of Juneteenth as a national holiday 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, was a step in the right direction by the US government to honor that principle. Now we, as individuals and families and congregants, need to honor it by recognizing that giving dignity to each person means listening and acknowledging each of our authentic voices. During the rest of the service, you will hear some of these authentic voices. Please join us in singing This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
This is the time in our service for milestones. We mark milestones that may be great joys or deep sorrows or whatever may be weighing on us or something we are carrying with us today for better or worse. And in our practice, we start with silent milestones. If you are here in the fellowship hall, I invite you to come up. You can place a stone in the bowl here. If you are at home and online and don't want to necessarily type out your milestone, you can also do a silent milestone by putting an X in the chat. So if you would like to come up, please do. now we will gratefully receive the offerings that sustain this congregation, its staff, its facilities. If you are with us for the first time today in person or online, please do not feel obligated to give. You can let the plate pass you by because your presence is your gift to us today. If you would like to donate, however, there are many ways to do so. The plates will be coming around here in the fellowship hall. You can go online. There will be a link in the chat if you are on Zoom. And we gratefully accept old-fashioned checks through the mail to 24 Clapboard Ridge Road as well. Thank you.
When the sun comes back, when the first quail calls, follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for, carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold. Well, the riverbank is a mighty good road. Dead trees show you the way. Left foot, peg foot, traveling on. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold. Well, the river ends between two hills. Follow the drinking gold. There's another river on the other side. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold. Where the little river meets the great big one. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. Follow the drinking gold. For the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gold.
Greetings again. Now, this message, my message, is in the form of storytelling. And storytelling is meant to be authentic. This was my experience. So some parts may shock you. Some may bring forth nervous laughter. Some may even cause you to judge me adversely. But I risk that. All I ask is don't shoot the messenger. And do stay for the end, as there is an important message for all of us. Here goes. I was standing in front of my elementary school, age 11, when it happened. I was just back from England, where my father had been called for 3 years to work. 2 boys were crouched down, whispering, and every time a bus went by, they would jump up, peer in the windows, and yell at the top of their lungs, "Chocolate" or "vanilla." As the English would put it, I hadn't the foggiest what they were doing at first, but as it dawned on me, it seemed sinister, and I was even afraid to mention it to my parents. Now, that was my first exposure to the changing racial landscape in my neighborhood in Richmond, Virginia, once the capital of the Confederacy. My elementary school, Ginter Park, had been all white when I attended. At its 100th anniversary recently, it was all children of color. Also, its name is due to be changed, like many names in Richmond, since apparently the philanthropist Louis Ginter had racist tendencies. So my first real exposure to an integrated school environment was in middle school and high school. It was on every parent's lips back then. Where should our children go to public high school? I remember the conversations at my own kitchen table. Generally speaking, George Wythe, across the river, in the rich section, was the Alabaster White School. Thomas Jefferson in the far north was for those willing to travel for segregation. And John Marshall, which my parents had attended when it was downtown, was racially mixed and was closest to our house. Of course, there were other non-integrated schools in sections of town where people of color predominated, which never entered into the conversation. The result? My parents did not involve me in the discussion, but they chose John Marshall, which I will call JM for short. The high school years were truly my formative years. In these vignettes, I will use interchangeably the terms African American, Black, non-white, and people of color, depending on the era, the context, and what's needed for the syntax of the sentence. I would say my class at JM was 25% people of color when I started as freshmen, and as the years progressed, after white flight, it shifted to 58% when I was a senior, based on my count from the yearbook. When I tell some of the following stories, the implication is that the other, a term implying a minority group who people isolate, marginalize, and even fear, might be shifting in my high school from people of color to white people. But was it really? And how did the changing racial mix affect me? In the early years, I won't deny that there were racial tensions. I remember one time my male buddies stood up during a pep rally and started dancing vigorously, and they were hauled into the principal's office for seemingly mocking the African American style of dancing, as if he knew what that was. But a more significant event was led by our band, which by then had a growing number of African American members. Our fight song, you see, was Dixie, written by a Northerner, but appropriated by the Southern soldiers during the Civil War. You probably know the beginning. I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away to Dixieland. But you may not know that in later verses, there are references to the missus, taken to mean the mistress of the plantation kept profitable with slave labor. Well, what happened at JM, as detailed in a book one of my classmates wrote, this is my library here, is the following. The Black members of the class had registered their distaste with Dixie with the white principal for 2 years, but to no avail. Finally, the band conspired to revolt. At a pep rally, after the band leader raised his baton, instead of Dixie, they suddenly played random notes in an explosive, chaotic cacophony of sound. Noise, really. Well, Dixie was never played again. And interestingly, there was no announcement over the PA system the next day. The silence was deafening. I laughed as I read it in the book. It serves the principle right, I thought to myself, and I also considered it a perfect example of nonviolent protest. But my classmates of both groups would not let me cite the experience at our last class reunion. They thought even now it might be divisive. Over time, a lot of the conventional institutions at JM became integrated naturally, in particular the sports teams, the cheerleaders, and the cadet corps. A bit later, the honor societies. But there were always two cafeterias, with the whites in one and the people of color in the other. This persisted over the years, with only a few crossover visitors, including my boyfriend and myself, since he was in a rock band and had some music-loving buddies in the other cafeteria. So you see, voluntarily, we chose our friends among our own kind. I always thought it was a shame that one of the talented African-American classmates in advanced classes was called an Uncle Tom behind her back. There was another anomaly, an approach to the student newspaper which subtly encouraged elitism. The students who opted in to work on it as a freshman were assigned to the same homeroom. We tended to recruit our friends, who were initially all white. But we newspaper people got together, we thought charitably, and decided to encourage some non-whites in to become reporters. This helped a bit to move us toward diversity, but in looking back, we realized it was still at its core a bit patronizing. Not that we turned anyone away. In our junior year, in the election for student government for the class above us, there were rumors that the people of color might begin to vote as a bloc. And there was a panicky reaction to this. But in our class, a Black student who ran for junior class president chose as her slogan, unity. This was particularly gracious as the ethnic ratio in our class had just shifted to a majority non-white by a slim margin. I so appreciated her reaching out like that to everyone's better nature. She did win, but it wasn't because of block voting. And it was widely viewed as well-deserved, both for her competence and her campaign theme. In senior year, there were similar displays of graciousness toward the white students, the new other. Please forgive my reliance on statistics to illustrate, which I consider a bit dehumanizing for all concerned at all times. The May Day court was 8 whites and 11 non-whites. The candidates for king and queen of the senior prom were 2 white couples and 3 non-white couples. And those famous most categories like cutest, wittiest, and most likely to succeed were a very diverse blend. And in my view, all excellent choices. The percentages were 41% white and 58% non-white, exactly. It was clear that people were not voting according to ethnic background, or at least they were trying to be, we were trying to be even-handed, I should say. I tried to erase all theys from my story. Now, my story does not end here. I confess that my humility and gratefulness at our treatment during the shifting racial mix turned into hubris. When I told these vignettes to friends over the years, I hinted that my experience at JM meant I was beyond prejudice, particularly when adding my years working at the World Bank with global citizens. While these experiences positively shaped my character, my eyes weren't fully opened until I took a course at the Unitarian Church about white privilege. We were asked to recount an experience when we felt like the other. Well, I did not refer to the JM experience as, frankly, we were graciously not treated as the other. Instead, I told of a time when my husband and I were searching for a church in Turkey, where we lived for 3 years on assignment with the World Bank. There were basically 3 Protestant churches, and we tried out each one. While the Baptist congregation, which turned out to be all non-white, was very welcoming, we felt isolated and uncomfortable, and neither of us had been raised Baptist anyway, so we took the most convenient choice, the Church of England right around the corner from the British pub and the British school our kids attended. Also during the Unitarian course, I confessed to once being startled at seeing people of color at a Shakespeare performance. Now, mind you, it was only for a few seconds before I told myself off, but it did happen. Finally, in that class, we were asked to react to some images of people on postcards. And I discovered I had a tendency to make unfair assumptions about Appalachian families, including those that were white. Now, after the course, I still sometimes had a self-congratulatory air at times. For example, when I attended a dialogues luncheon at the African American Museum of History and Culture. But after I recounted my stories of high school enrichment and listened to the people of color at the table, I learned the term microaggression for the first time. Embarrassed, I had to ask for examples and realized afterwards that I had sometimes been unwittingly guilty. So you see, I still have certain prejudices, despite my positive high school experience, for which I remain grateful. I wager we all do, and we need to look ourselves in the mirror and admit it. As I said in the story, focusing on listening and aiming to hear everyone's authentic voices is a step in the right direction. Beyond that, we can all look forward to moving from being just non-racist to being anti-racist, which will be the subject of my reading and charge at the end of the subject. And there are a couple of books on the subject here if people want to look at it after the service. Thank you.
Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. You'll find the words on the screen as well as in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Our hymn of celebration is De Colores. There will be a video playing, but it is also in our hymnal at number 305 if you find it helpful to follow along with those words or the music. If you'd like to rise and sing along, feel free.
All the colors, yes, the colors we see in the springtime with all its flowers. All the colors, when the sunlight shines out through a rift in the cloud and it showers. All the colors, as a rainbow appears when a storm cloud is touched by the sun. All the colors are bound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the colors of people parading on by with their banners. All the colors, yes, the colors of pennants and streamers and plumes and bandanas. All the colors, yes, the colors of people now taking their place in the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. All the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. All the colors, yes, the colors of people who know that their freedom is won. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun.
I first sang that at a UUA General Assembly, and I really liked it. This is the reading. Denial is the heartbeat of racism, beating across ideologies, races, and nations. It is beating within us. Many of us who strongly call out politicians' racist ideas will strongly deny our own. What's the problem with being not racist? It is a claim that signifies neutrality. I am not a racist, but neither am I aggressively against racism. But there is no neutrality in the racism struggle. The opposite of racist isn't not racist, it is anti-racist. What's the difference? One endorses either the idea of a racial hierarchy as a racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. One either believes problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist or locates the roots of problems in power and policies as an anti-racist. One either allows racial inequities to persist as a racist or confronts racial inequities as an anti-racist. There is no in-between safe space of not racist. The good news is that racist and anti-racist are not fixed identities. We can be a racist one minute and an anti-racist the next. What we say about race, what we do about race in each moment determines what and not who we are.
Lift every voice.
voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies resound the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. March on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, to the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn has died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place from which our fathers died. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter, out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last. White gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk of the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadow beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our God, true to our God, true to our